Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of the last day. Mr. Kerk Kim Paul, Head of Sports Cares, Sport Singapore, will be giving the closing address.
Good afternoon, everybody. For those who have not met me on this conference, my name is Kerk Kim Paul. I'm the head of Sport Cares Foundation, the philanthropic arm of Sport Singapore. It gives me great pleasure to deliver the closing comments for our inaugural Inclusive Sport Conference 2021. I'd like to recall when we started on this journey of organizing the conference, right? So that more of you understand the context of how this conference came about, and also what are our bigger dreams and vision, why we want to have this conference, right? And so back in 2016, when the Disability Sports Master Plan was first developed, we broached the idea of an inclusive sport festival to be able to bring people of all abilities together to enjoy a sporting day out, right, in different locations across the years. The idea then was to let people try and see for themselves the kind of activities people of different abilities can play, and more importantly, how they can play together, right, in the community. And we also want the non-PWDs to be able to see how persons with disabilities can play a sport with just some adaptation or just some changes in rules, and how the non-PWD can actually join in. After running 3 seasons or 3 years of Inclusive Sports Festival, we think it's high time for this sport festival, the inclusive part of sports festival, to be normalized, in the sense that we want as many activities in the community to be inclusive inherently, right, as possible, rather than we organize a separate inclusive sports festival for persons with disabilities. I think this underlies the dream and vision we have that underpin the conference, that our tagline is towards a more inclusive society through sport. How do we embed inclusivity and the thinking of how do we include people of all abilities into all the activities that we do, right? And this conference tries to engender that conversation. And as we know, of course, in the community, there are many stakeholders and many parties that we need to bring together to realize this vision. So the conference provides a valuable platform for different stakeholders to come and share their views, for us to learn from one another, and together to create the future that we want together as a community. So it's very heartening to see we reached the target that we set out for. We have close to 1,000 participants that registered for the conference. The response from the support from organizations, and the speakers and the schools have been tremendous. I'd like to thank all the speakers for the hard work and preparation and the thought they put into your work and presentation. That makes this conference, in my opinion, a tremendous success. Right. And so we have gleaned from different experts and from caregivers and from the athletes themselves, their views. It will take us the following weeks, probably also months, to consolidate these views, ideas, suggestions, to enhance our system and processes, right, going forward, informing how we can bring this to the next step and how we build on the foundations built in this conference to do a better, even better inclusive sport conference next year and in the coming years. So at this point, I'd like to iterate a couple of principles I've gleaned, not just from this conference, but in the years of involving myself in this work. I think a conference participant or dialogue participant put it very succinctly, looking at people with different disabilities as having different abilities instead. So we focus on the ability and do not focus on the disability. That's the first one principle, right? And then going forward, the second principle is also about consultation. We don't do what we think is best by ourselves, or the organizations just do what they think is best. There's always a need for consultation, always a need of discussion and consensus, working together, right? That's my consideration number 2. And number 3, meaningful partnerships are important. Nobody can do the work alone. Nobody should be doing this work alone, right? And if you have an idea, if you have a passion, let's join up. And one of the, I think, main idea that we have arising from this conference is how to create this sustainable platform and networks that we can continue to engage one another, talk to one another, have the sense of togetherness. I think this positivity and aspiration is important. I relate my own experience, right? My son, who is on the ASD, on the spectrum, right? He spent his first primary 1 to 6 in a mainstream school, right? And in the beginning, when we had him diagnosed at primary 3, our constant lamentation is, how come the teachers don't know how to deal with my son, right? How come he's excluded? How come with all the training, there's still gaps, you know? I think those feelings are normal, but to turn it into something positive and useful, let's say just for my son, the conversation is, what should we do? Who should we feedback to? And who should we consult to make the situation better? Not just for your own loved ones, but for everybody in the system, right? I think that's the other, probably the 4th principle I like to espouse. That is to take a positive perspective and an aspirational perspective in all that we have experienced, whether it is, even if the experience you had could be negative, there may be shortfall that you see in the system or the people you meet. But I think the positive aspiration is then, how do we think we can all play a part in putting this across in a positive manner so that we actually make improvement to the system rather than looking at what we don't want. Let's together look at what we want. What do we want moving forward in all the gaps or challenges that you see? And then the orientation is, how can we collectively do something about it so that we can achieve what we want, rather than complaining about what we do not want, right? That's my personal take on, as a parent myself, right? Over the years of experiencing the issues and challenges that we want to overcome together, right? As for the conference, I think I want to iterate, frame it under the 3 key thrusts under the Disability Sports Master Plan. One is on access and opportunity, right? Access, of course, the most basic requirement would be the physical access part of it, right? In this, I think the various authorities do have the plans and do have that will to want to make all our facilities accessible. Of course, it helps with members of the public and people come and provide feedback and suggestions of where it can be done better, right? And that, to me, is a hygiene factor we have to take care of. That is the physical hardware and facilities improvement. The more challenging part, of course, is developing the software. And in this aspect, again, we need people from different backgrounds and expertise to come together, to want to do this together, right? From a layman volunteer to an expertise coach and everybody in between, right? To come together, to have that common vision, right? That we espouse. That common vision will be any person with any ability, different levels of ability, can play together in any occasion, in any location. right? And how each of us can come together and create those opportunities for everyone to come together. And I think moving on to capability development, one so-called insight official requirements, and then what are so-called not cardinal requirements, but community level requirements, where how do we engender more play in the community without the need for really qualified, fully qualified coaches. We know coaches under the NROC system has already quite a number of requirements they have to attain. The conversation moving forward is at what level of certification we require for different level of coaches coaching different kind of sport, right? To be able to coach those sport effectively, right? Today's inspiration and insight I had from talks from the experts. I think one thing that struck me, right? I think Peggy talked about the need to be creative and flexible, right? I think at the system level, at the framework level, we also want to be or need to be creative and flexible, because there's never a one-size-fits-all solution for different. You just talk about disability types. There are many, right? And just even within the disability type, there are many different personalities. Everyone is different, right? My son is different from your daughter and your son. Even they are all on the ASD, on the spectrum. The requirements are different. It takes the coach to really know the person, to be able to adapt the program to suit the person, right? So while a formal framework and qualifications will help set maybe the baseline, but I will implore all coaches and volunteers to look at the principle of how to be flexible, to be creative, knowing your participant as a first principle, to be able to develop an effective program. And this, we should let 1,000 flowers bloom, in my opinion, right? And even the students looking at the BIA project earlier as an example, they are doing a great job by just learning about their peers and then coming up with programs to engage them. I think what we want really is to seed those fire, let it spread, and everybody engage their own community. And then we all discover, using our creativity, right, to bring these programs out, right, for people with different abilities to join. That's my thought on capability development. In a nutshell, how do we balance, right, the need for formal training, and then the rest is about having just the passion and the will to learn, and then apply creativity. Of course, safety, right, is of paramount importance, and therefore certain knowledge to be put out in the open needs to be established. So my final point will be on creating awareness and outreach, right? Nothing will move forward if we only preach to the choir. I think many people, especially those who are still with us now and listening to me, you are already bought in. You are already, you are part of the system. You already want to do good. I think the challenge is how, as collective, we can reach the so-called unreachables, right? And then every one of us has a voice. How do we make this inclusive conference, sport conference, right? Starting from 1,000 participants to 10,000 or even more, right? Just for people to understand and come in and contribute and participate. How do we grow that space? We do have a dream of serving as a point of excellence, right? For people to gather, not just for Singapore. Of course, that is our most that is the immediate focus area that we have for the next few years. But eventually, we could be a beacon around the region, and hopefully also join up with the best in the world. And that's our ambition, right? To be, and not in of and out itself to be best, but how when we are there, we can do better for our people, for our residents of Singapore. I think that with that, I think that's my last thought that I want to share. Again, let me thank all the participants for taking up the precious time to join us, all the speakers, presenters, and of course, I'd like to thank the team that's worked tirelessly behind the conference to make this a success it is. Right, I will see you in the next edition. In the meantime, send us your suggestions, your ideas, review the videos when they're put up online, and I'll see you again very soon. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Kerk, for your closing address.